Bueno, buenos días. Gracias a todos por venir a esta segunda mesa redonda sobre talentos emergentes. Gracias al Festival de San Sebastián, que ha acogido y organizado esta propuesta que impulsa la revista Variety, a la que represento. Mi nombre es Emilio Mayorga, como también representa a nuestro jefe de internacional, aquí en la fila 0, John Hopwell. Le preguntaron a un poeta una vez qué es la poesía y dijo él que es una de las cosas que si me preguntas qué es no sabré qué decir, pero si no me lo preguntas lo sé perfectamente. Yo creo que el talento, el cine, una serie de conceptos gruesos entra aquí perfectamente.
And I think that talent should be defined. Talent is nothing without hard work. This is by Cristiano Ronaldo. Talent is a knife without an edge, and it will never cut unless you're very strong. That's by Stephen King. Nothing in this world can be as important as perseverance, not talent. Nothing is more common than talented failed men, by Kelvin Kirby's. And last but not least, a genius has 1% talent and 99% hard work, by Albert Einstein and Michael Jordan. It's teamwork that wins the game. So what is common to all of these quotes? Talent is not enough, whether it is winning a battle or making a film, whatever it is. You need hard work, teamwork, courage, inspiration, and in filmmaking, talent needs the industry for the work to be successful. So how can we access talent in our industry, and how can we communicate between talents and industry? Many of you know these people. I have Antonio Saura here with us, a director at Latido Films, one of the sales agents, international sales agents that are leading the way for Spanish films, or films in Spanish. Antonio Saura has Belén Funes' film now in their portfolio, which will be released tomorrow here at the festival. Latido Films is very well known because of their auteur films and their new directors. El Hoyo by Ander Gaztelu, that did very well in Toronto, Carmen and Lola by Carmen Echevarria, and next to him we have Maialen Beloki. Thank you so much, by the way, Antonio, for coming. Maialen Beloki is Deputy Director of the festival here. She's a member of the selection committee, and she knows very much about new directors. I'm sure she will have a lot to say here today. Augusto Matté is an independent Chilean producer in Girapa Films. He's now an independent director. He worked in the past with the Larraín brothers, producing their films in Spanish when they started in Los Angeles, with their headquarters there. Thank you very much, Augusto, for being here with us. Augusto Matté did Los Perros, Aquí no ha pasado nada, and a very special short film with a very interesting title, Y todo el cielo cupo en el ojo de la vaca muerta, that did very well in Sundance, and they're going to do a sequel, a long feature film after that short film. And then David Zonana and Belén Funes. David Zonana did his first piece not so long ago. He worked as a producer with Michel Franco. Thank you, David, for being here. And Belén Funes, she has La hija del ladrón by Viking Productions. It will be released tomorrow. I think you're both probably very nervous. Thank you for being here with us today. I would like to start with Maialen, who has to watch thousands of films every year with the selection committee. Am I right? That's right. There are 10 of us at the committee, and we watch around 3,800 films, round about that figure, every year. San Sebastian is special because films don't apply for one specific section. It's the selection committee that decides, looking at the rules for the different sections, which section would be best for that particular piece. We often say that one of our real favorite sections is new directors, because finding an opera prima, a new director with his or her first film, is really exciting. David and Belén are here today. Those cases are very exciting for us when they run for the official section. A programmer is very excited when we find a new talent. That's right. There are now 5 films in the official section that are by new directors. That's right. Not so many years ago, our festival decided to make a change, because we've always been in touch with Latin America, with the co-production forum, with the construction section, so many different sections aimed at Latin America. But not so long ago, we also decided that new talent had to be promoted. We then decided to have the new directors as the second main section in the festival, not just as part of Sabalteri, and also push hard those first or second films by new directors that deserved it, so we could better promote new talent. That's our commitment, firm commitment now. We want to be a festival for new talent. When you watch all those films, Maialen, what ingredients do you look for you to decide, I like this, this is a new talent, a new director? Any selection procedure has its rules, and fortunately there are 10 of us at the committee, so we have different outlooks, different interests, and that's what makes us stronger. In the case of new directors, sometimes you find that special gaze, that certain special outlook, which is not just interesting, but that contributes something truly different for the industry. That's when you see that person has a bright future ahead of him or her. We also like having diversity and variety, because that's what filmmaking should be about, whether it's genre movie or auteur cinema, sometimes projects with a larger budget or not so large, but that special gaze is important. What about you, Augusto? You're an independent producer, and you are a headhunter to a certain extent. So what is it that you see for that special gaze to be spotted? Well, in my case, is when I feel passionate and emotional when I watch a film. That's when I decide that director, using a language I understand, is really worth it. Because there are times when I might be watching something that I think could be interesting, but we don't speak the same language, and then I don't see how I could produce that film. There are talents that might be great, but might not do very well with me. So it's watching a film that touches me, that I feel passionate about, and also because of my interests. Maybe it's got something political about it, and with a language I understand. Oh, that's great. Speaking the same language with that new director. Not every talent is right for every producer. Absolutely. Somebody could be very talented, but if we don't speak the same language, if we can't communicate properly, then I can't work with that film. Antonio was telling me recently, I will come to the panel, but please remember that I'm right at the end of the food trough. But you spot talent and you launch it as well. So is it difficult selling those new directors internationally, and are there countries that are more amenable to that? Well, it's just as hard as well-known directors. It just depends on the film, I feel. I've recently had experiences with new female directors, and it's been very rewarding. For instance, Pepa San Mateo, that got the award here at Horizontes Latinos, Latin Horizons, and Generation K Plus in Berlin, or Carmen and Lola, that's brought so much satisfaction to us. Or Buñuel, for instance, that was a new director. Or El Hoyo, for instance, is doing really well now. So I think it just depends on the film more than on the director. So what is it that I look for? Well, it's that special case. La hija del ladrón, for instance. The Thief's Daughter is a good example. It's that gaze, that outlook, that point of view that's different from anybody else that could have told that story. That's what we look out for. What about marketing the product? Well, if you believe in a project, then we immediately give added value to it. That's the secret. I think right now, because we've been so fortunate with a number of new directors, we're finding it quite simple and easy to sell them, even more so than with senior directors. Well, I mean, I have nothing against traditional directors, mind you. I asked you that question. Is it easier or harder to promote and sell new directors? Thinking how very often maybe promoting a film with not very well-known actors might be harder. Well, you can collaborate as a producer at different stages. With The Thief's Daughter, we came in quite late. That didn't discourage us, but that was the case. And The Thief's Daughter, that's such an amazing duel of actors that just by showing a few good pictures of that duel, that was good enough. In other cases, you need to have a really outstriking photography for it to work. Our customer, our end client, is not distributors. It's film lovers, really. And they're the ones that have to decide how to convince exhibitors and the different stakeholders. And we have to help convince them that that will be good business to them. We're intermediaries between producers and distributors, really. When thinking about how to better position a film, sometimes you need to convince that that particular poster will sell better with the buyer, not with the audiences, but the buyer is important. Belén's film, for instance, will be positioned in the market here at the festival. So we'll have to wait for that to happen and then work on the markets. El Hoyo was different. We started working on it in Cannes. And are there some territories that are more receptive to this, to new directors than others? Well, I think a number of people are very curious about new female directors. We should make the most of that. Are there countries that are more receptive? Well, maybe France. But to tell you the truth, things change so fast that remember how China had a flourishing stage, not anymore. Then platforms might buy certain products for a period of time and then stop it.
Una película como esta pues puede funcionar perfectamente también en mercados anglosajones.
A film like hers could work very well in France or in the US, but not Italy, because Italy has really closed their market because Sky is not buying a lot of foreign films right now. I was thinking of a question. You've had experience in production. You've been a production assistant. You've also worked in casting departments, so you know about that. And David has worked as a producer in the past. And now you are looking at all of this from the other side. What barriers have you found when it came to launching your project?
¿Sí sirve? Sí. Bueno, pues las dificultades creo que son las que más o menos todos los realizadores imaginamos, ¿no?
Well, I don't think I'm going to say anything very new here. Directing a film is not a simple matter. So if you're both a director and a producer, then there's a lot at risk, at stake. As a director, the risk, what you risk is your career. So you take every project as something that's very personal. Not so much as a producer. What barriers have I found? Well, really, you have to make sure that you're going to do something that will interest the general audience, festivals, the different windows, but over and above that, doing something that you're proud of. Didn't you feel squashed by the production side of things? Well, it is a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but you have to remember at all times that you have to do something that you like and that you find interesting. I think we make a mistake if we try and control everything and try and make it right for everybody. You should just believe in your project and then let your film do its bit, making sure that you're interested in the theme, the subject matter, because it's a long process. I was thinking of asking David and Belén this question because I'm convinced that something could be done to tell the story about all those films and projects that have never come up, all those fantastic potential directors that never made it, that had a wonderful project, whether it is a short film or a long feature film, but that didn't come through because we know how the industry sometimes pushes people out. So it's important for talents to manage to talk to the industry. You're right, there are so many elements involved and so much subjective judgment involved. And I'm sure there have been many potentially good directors that never made it. And that's why art in general is so complex, because it's very subjective to a large extent. And you have to accept that you might fail, no matter how hard you try. It's true that being persistent and hardworking helps, and being confident and knowing that you might fail, and if you do fail, is not the end of anything. You have to keep going. What about you, Belén? About your previous question first, I was thinking about my first film. I wanted to have clear in my mind my personal political stance first, and making that decision is like giving birth. Deciding what is the message and how am I going to convey that message in a way that is exciting and important for me, but also trying to imagine how people will experience it. Then, apart from that, there's the production side of things. And I think the great risk is that production sometimes destroys a project, and I've seen that happen. That's right, and for that talent not to be wasted or lose its nature. That's right. So that when the film is shot, it's done the way you want it to be done. Yes, but then you need a producer who really loves you. That's right. A lot of love and some money. That's what they should contribute. And then for people to really understand one another, and for people to understand that I need to do things in a certain way, otherwise it won't work. So you need to first decide what the message should be, and then be open about how you want to do it. Well, I have a general question for any of you, including the audience. Please raise your hand if you want to take the floor now, and we will let you have the roving mic. So, a general question. When do you first see talent? Is it at the pitchings, residencies, at the laboratories, watching a short film? Where? Maialen.
Well, I'm going to put it from the festival's perspective, or from our current perspective. Yes, we do have a residency program, Ikuspira Berriak, which was created when the festival was moved to Tabacalera, a cultural center, and we started to work together with in the project with residencies for authors, and somehow we started to follow up talents of the project, and that is also the aim of the co-production forum. And historically, the festival also has what we call the Cantera, the STEM for new talents, the International NEST, International Film Student Encounters. And this is a selection of short films and of career project. And this is how talents are become more visible. Every year we receive more and more short films. 400 we had this year from different schools from all over the world. And when you see what the students are doing, you start to see emerging talent, different perspectives, different visions, and geographically what each area is doing, and lines, common lines within countries, and it seems strange, but not also in the themes, but also the way they approach from a film perspective. So the festival tries to work with new or future directors from the project in the co-production family and the residencies, as well as from with their short films. We love it when the projects go to other festivals or are released, premiered here. When we see a film director that was a student in our festival comes back as with their opera prima. This year we have a case with Orengerna, who won the student award 5 years ago and is back with a new production, Africa. So this is like a way of following up the talent, sometimes since the beginning, when it's only a written project. Yes, the festivals are key in that sense, crucial. Yes, of course. All the festivals have something that is relevant, linked to what we said before about how you communicate with your team. The team takes care of your idea, protects your idea. And knowing meeting, spotting the talent, just having a drink, and you discover a person, not only in the co-production forum, which is good to look for partners, but for the first steps, I find it really hard in a forum or in a situation that is more formal, where everybody is trying to defend their product, and the first step has to be something more personal. It's dialogue between people, and that's why the festival take place in cities where there's good atmosphere, good drinks, good food, and you make friends that might end up being your partners in films. Well, you have had this experience because you have had this experience in that sense. Yes, I totally agree. The human relationships, as in every other field, are just crucial. And of course, knowing who the person you have in front of you regarding the spotting the talent is very important. I'd like to speak about short films. Are they also a key? Are they also a launching platform to make industrial film that is distributed in movie theaters? You have made 3 of them, and one of them, the inspiration came from the main character of your film. Your short films, beyond this reception, they are able to showcase the talent. Many writers and directors know that short films provide experience and strength to film further projects, but also then again taking it so seriously as thinking that your career depends on a short film. I don't think you have to go all that way. I think it's just a way of experimenting and practicing and creating, making your own voice standing up, because if you haven't had experience before, it's difficult to know who you are, and it is at work that you start to know yourself. I'd like to know the opinion of Chema at some point, because he's the father of the Basque short films. He's responsible of Kimuak, the Basque program, and through these 22 years of festivals, Nacho Vigalondo, Maida Fernandez, many of them have gone through him. Do you see it as a launching platform to end up making feature films? And also, Xavier Bezosa told me the other day, one of the producers of The Endless Strange, they still do short films because they like to take risks. They take it as a challenge. They experiment. They test things that work, that they then bring to feature films. But Xavier said that the new directors, the young directors, they are obsessed when they do it a short film of showing everything they know, and they take like excessive risks. Thank you. Yes, obviously I'm not going to fight against my own house, but I think short films are very, very important. They're decisive. Or, well, it actually depends on the case. Some people have made their feature film without touching the short film scene. But of course, the last thing you said was the short films are a terrain where you have the possibility of doing something that is actually going to be much more complicated in a feature film, because there's going to be much more money and much more control. You know this because you have made short films yourselves. But obviously, first, as a school, as an area of learning, but not also as a way of learning or gaining experience for to be a filmmaker, but also the short film format is in itself a piece of art. Of course, yes. And this director that I called Almandov, that now he makes feature films, but he's always been very proud of being a short film director because his stories are made for short films. Some stories don't need to become feature films. Well, sometimes on the contrary, we find that feature films that are too long and that have been excellent if they had been a short film. Well, I think that the step, the short film is it's a crucial step to end up finding your place in the industry. But at the same time, I think it deserves all the respect on its own. I know a lot of directors, and I'm not going to mention now, whose feature films are way worse than what their short film was. And maybe the reason is because it's not only easier, but the director himself is capable of managing a short film, but for some reason it's like a short story writer that can't make a long novel. So these are elements that we have to consider. Well, obviously, it makes sense because of its own legitimaity. Well, basically, short films are limited to festivals most of the time. With the arrival of platforms, I thought maybe the platforms enable the short films to reach wider audiences, global audiences, but I don't think the evolution has this. Do you think, Antonio, that short films will have access to the platforms? Well, if I knew what the platforms would welcome in the future, I'll be a millionaire by now. Well, what is a short film? Actually, the short works in YouTube are really having a lot of success. The narrative language is changing constantly. The classic short film is very difficult to release. But there's other formulas who are being very successful in internet, in YouTube, whatever. But what I think is the audiovisual language is continuously evolving, and we are going to see different things all the time. Classic short films is difficult. We don't manage them but they're important because it enables you to see the director's perspective and to see what they're going to, or to decide if you're going to end up producing or selling as a sales agent his work. And you feel confident if you know someone knows how to direct actors, know how to place the camera, he manages the music and all the elements, but then the reality of filming, of shooting a feature film has nothing to do with a short film, because all the level of demand is completely different. Belén, have you noticed a big change from your short films to directing your feature film? Well, regarding short films and regarding feature films, for me, the change hasn't. I haven't perceived the change because I have used the same technical stuff. The team has been the same because I think it's important to work with your friends. It's probably the only solution. For me, it would be impossible to work with people who don't know me, who I don't know. It would be just a punishment. So I've chosen. The team has been the same. So the difference hasn't been that obvious. And then I don't really like the classic short films, and I don't think my short films, which is a portrait from a teenager in a center, and then of a 30-year-old that hates her job. So they're not the classic cliche short films. I felt relaxed. If you try to do something in order to work, to have success, because nobody told you to do it, it was your own idea to do it. If you try to do things to please others, it's not a good idea. I'm more, I think that it's better that, I think short films are, it's like a lab where you can try things you would like to do in a feature films. Because their experiment lab is underrated. I think even feature films would have to be more like that, but that is my opinion. I think a lot of people share your opinion, take more risk. Well, nobody asked you to do that project, so why are you doing it to work, to please people? It will please whoever has to please. Nobody is expecting your short film. So do whatever you feel like doing. So the feature film was done pretty much like this, in a very intuitive way, instinctive way. Yes, because I was working with people who knew how I work. So if you suddenly a shot doesn't come out, nobody is nervous. They know that in the end it will come out, and even if we have to work some extra hours tomorrow. And that's how I like to work, because I think that's the key to success. So the biggest changing is that instead of 4 days, we shot during 8 weeks. But it wasn't a completely new, unknown universe for me. I had worked in films, in feature films before, so I knew what a shooting set. Regarding the platforms, it is also important to differentiate different platforms. There's decent and indecent platforms. We know who the indecent are, but the decent are these. They buy short films, like movie, they curate short films, filming. Criterion Collection, who now has channel, they adapt short films to works from very well-known authors. They have platforms with curators, not accountants. So it changes really very much the way they promote new directors. In our case, with our short film, Criterion Channel, they offered it in a double pack with Latido, and for us it was such an honor. It was, but then it is important to have great persons behind them, people behind them. Antonio knows better how the platforms work in this sense, and he has had to deal with it. Yes, I totally agree with you. We think sometimes that platforms, there's only very few platforms, but there's a lot of people behind the platforms who do a lot of great work. But then the exposure, the media exposure, is not the same for all of them. Yes, I have produced a few short films, and if all of a sudden they are placed somewhere in a festival, then a whole new world opens up. But I think, like Belén said, a short film is like a test lab. It allows you to explore yourself, to give the best of yourself in a short format, in a brief format. But as an international sales agency, the last short film I produced, I gave it to expert short film distributors. I didn't do it myself because I didn't know what to do with it, because the roads and the ways they use are different festivals. But if it succeeds, of course, they receive awards, and it's very rewarding. Well, I like to add regarding this theme that all the short film makers, when they have a short film in the hands, they try to not take so seriously the platform. The idea and the aim is to show it to a bigger audience possible. That's how people will connect with your vision. So I'm not afraid of sharing it everywhere, YouTube. That's the idea. It is hard to make a business of short films. We all know this. We are aware of this. Or even reaching festivals is hard with a short film. So it's good to make it available for everyone to watch. Yes, of course, we are approaching it from a new talent doing short films. But lately, we've seen a lot of directors who are going after a very long career. They're going back to short film because they want to tell stories that are more adapted to short films, or maybe. And Sebastian doesn't have a proper short film section, but Sabaltegui programs these kind of films, and together with feature films, well, that's the curator work is very important, the dialogue between short and feature films that are produced. And this year we have Chema Ibarra and directors who have an experience, or Martin Breckman, but they keep working on the short film format because they still have a will to do things, not always wait for the whole production to be constructed and completed. Have you ever thought about adding an official section of short film? Yes, we have, but it's very difficult to manage because opening the door implies opening to many short films, and it's difficult to manage regarding the selection committee. We had that experience with Sabaltegui, this section of the festival that is less limited when it comes to duration. You have series, short films. It's the open section of the festival. And when we started to add medium or short films, for instance, last year the Sabaltegui Award went to a short film, we started to realize that it attracted more and more works. So as of now, we are not thinking about opening a short film, a competitive short film, but the NEST, the film student section, has a competition with short film, and we think that because it's a student film section, it's an amateur film, but no, actually, the quality of the films is it's very well comparable with the Berlin section. The level of the works is very high, and that's our short film section in the festival. So going back to what we spoke before, have you been through a residency or a lab to do your work? Well, yes, I was in the Toronto screenplay lab. It's a special lab. I send them my previous short, and they evaluate your previous film and the film you're working on at the moment, and then they decide your selection, and you can be directed by tutors. So labs, for me, are an excellent idea if you don't feel overwhelmed by them. So, because if 100 people have an opinion about your film and what your film needs and what your film lacks or shouldn't have, can become a problem. But in whole, the experience is really positive because I feel that as soon for me, it was a test. Every time somebody gave the perspective of the film, it taught me to analyze it through the communication, not from your own perspective, from your isolation, thinking that you're writing something fantastic that it actually is not that fantastic. That's why I think it's very interesting to put the films into perspective, in a global perspective, because otherwise they're just virtual ideas. They're virtual ideas. Yes.
I think in general people are happy with laboratories, right? And you're right. There are times when you look at a project and it's been overdone, overcooked. They're not fresh, right? You're right, because more recently, because some labs like Torino, a number of them, festivals tend to have labs, and they're not all the same. They're different, but you're right. The lab effect, you can smell it at a distance when you look at a project or when you watch a film, and they tend to all look fairly similar. In our residency program, I think we've done it in a different way. They come, there are just 5 of them, they come for a good number of weeks first, and then they come for the festival, for the pitching session. It's a very small group, so that's different. I think depending on the project and the director, you need to find a lab that suits you. Anybody has anything else you want to add? Right. So let's go back, not to festivals, but to public institutions, because they tend to offer backing and support to first films by new directors. In many countries they do so. They get extra points, whatever, for their scoring. Can you think of something that public institutions or film funds, whatever, could do to give better support to first films? Well, I personally think that whenever there are intermediaries, whether it's an institute, a platform, whatever, really, when you talk to filmmakers, when you talk to them, what they need is money. They need funding. I was thinking about the previous law that we had in Spain, where first and second films were promoted. I think we were the country that made really a long list of first and second films, and the real test was making your third film. And more recently, I think we've got a lot of new directors with first films that are doing well. So that says a lot about talent here in Spain and also in Latin America. Well, back in the day, not now, you're right, there was more funding and support, not anymore. Yeah, because Brazil is a no-no at the moment. We'll have to wait and see what happens politically speaking. Well, in Dominican Republic or Panama or Guatemala, I can think of a number of Latin American countries where the film industry, the audiovisual industry is thriving. But you're right, there are a number of countries where both democracy and the audiovisual industry are suffering immensely in Latin America. So let's go back to talent. I think in the past they cropped up everywhere, too much, too many film festivals. And now it's not festivals that are cropping up, but labs and workshops and residencies, right? So is that bad news? Well, it depends how that's done. But I sometimes feel sorry for those people who seem to be pilgrims of Guadalajara and Sevilla and then Torino and then Cottbus and then Tallinn and all of that long pilgrimage for one single project. And I often think, what is the reward at the end of that? So I sometimes think they might be doing tourism from one workshop to the next rather than work on their project. And what do you get? Is it the same if you learn something at Bellatar or Sundance? I bet very often you have contradictory opinions on your script, and that made you lose your faith on your original idea. So, because a script could be like a pizza where everybody wants to add their own ingredients, and you might have to say, hey, stop, and go back to your original margarita, which is what you like. I think creative artists need to be careful and know how far to go. It's like choosing what university to go to. Shanghai seems to know which ones are better or worse in their ranking. Well, can San Sebastian, Berlin, logically is a different division, right? Like in football, to other places. So having a long list of workshops is not always best unless you choose the right one for your project, which is risky, a risky choice. You're right. That comparison between laboratories and universities, that was a good comparison. Let's go back to public institutions and funding. You all seem to agree that it's money that's needed, basically. And let me give you the example of Galicia in northwestern Spain, one of the maybe 2-3 regions in Spain where new talent is really arising. Why? I'm sure there are a number of different reasons, but one of the main ones, surely, must be the subsidies that were given back, I think it was 10-15 years ago, directly given to directors, not to producers or to anybody else. We have Oliver Laxi, Ucedo. We have a long list of Galician directors. I'm not going to run through the whole list. So money is needed. Let's go back to that. But can we guarantee somehow that that money gets to where it's needed? Is it development aid that's required? Well, that's a hard question. You're right. Galicia is a good example where the new Galician cinema with Estadiño, Laxar, all those new directors, partly thanks to that public support. Those directors are not new anymore, so they're playing in a different league, but there's no doubt that that support, public support, made it possible for them to reach out to certain audiences and festivals and whatever. In Oliver's case, that's definitely, he's in a different league now with Okearde. The Galician example was successful. And what about Catalonia in northeastern Spain? There are new female directors there that are looking very promising. And is that because of public backing? Yes, it is, but also because of their background and tradition, because of their training institutions. So I think public support can be part of the recipe for success, but there are other ingredients that also make it possible for those new talents to arise. You're right. Talent can come up individually as an isolated example. You mentioned female directors that are good examples of that. But sometimes there is new talent arising as part of a whole generation. So why do whole generations of talent come up in Galicia or Catalonia and nowhere else? Well, our director, Rebordinos, often says that we'll have to wait and see how, after the Tabacalera Culture Center was set up recently, with all those creative artists benefiting from that and giving support to new filmmakers, we're quite sure that we will soon or eventually have the Tabacalera filmmaking generation. So we have to sow the seed, and then as time goes by, new directors, a whole generation of them crops up. Any more ideas? Why do generations arise? In the case of Catalonia and the female directors, new female directors there, well, I think a lot of that is thanks to our two universities that rank very high in filmmaking. When you get to one of those two universities, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. What matters is what you do. So you have to understand from the beginning that what you want to do is make a film and not listen too much to those people who seem to think it can't be done. I have a number of female directors who are close friends of mine. And little by little, a woman making a film is not an oddity, and that's thanks to training in those universities in our region. Self-training sometimes help, but in my case, attending university, that was when I realized that making a film was not just a crazy idea of mine, but it was something that could actually happen, and it could be done. I think that's very important for us to continue to weave the web, not just for female directors, but for men too. Hey, and what about festivals? And not just large festivals like San Sebastian, because festivals are open windows for many places. In Galicia, for instance, in northwestern Spain, there are a number of small festivals that manage to sell films that otherwise would get nowhere. Antonio? Well, you mentioned festivals, but I just wanted to say something else about what Elena mentioned, education and training. Let's think about Mexico and your training center for filmmaking there, and there are two filmmaking schools, and they're doing very well with animation. Guillermo is going to set up another one in Guadalajara. I don't know so much about Chile, but Argentina is another great example for education and training in filmmaking. In Spain, in Madrid, have so many examples where funds could be very well invested in education and training. Festivals can help to disseminate knowledge and make talent visible. But universities and training schools are doing very well with training professionals and specialists. And where should money come from? Well, from public institutions, please. I mean, what are they there for otherwise? What about who should get public support? Directors, scriptwriters, producers? Well, I was part of the Media One team, helping with the script fund. And I found there that generations just arise, not depending whether you invest or not. For instance, the so-called Cinexin generation in Andalusia with Aitor Rodriguez and so on, they were short filmmakers. That's how it started. In the Basque Country, we have Juanma Bajo Ulloa, or in Aragon, Buñuel, Borao, or my father himself. That happened without public support. So there are a number of ingredients: training, passion, and a group of good friends. And abracadabra, a new generation. What about your father? What is he up to? Well, my father is still going strong. He released a new theater play recently, a new opera. Wow, yeah, the seniors as well. We're talking about new talent, but what about seniors? I love this idea of seniors because I see all these younger people coming strong, and I think, hey, I need to protect myself, and so I can continue to pay my mortgage. We were talking about festivals and education and training, and I wanted to mention how our festival here, a couple of years ago, set up the filmmaking school in Tabacalera, the Elías Querejeta School, and the film festival helped together with the Basque Film Library, and that was the time when we decided that we would be unique in the world as a film festival that got involved in education and training directly. We will soon start with the second promotion, the second year, and the specialist areas are curatorial, archiving, well, different specialist areas. So why not combining in one single set of facilities both the offices of the festival and the school? Well, you're right, because we're talking about filmmaking schools, but they can be very different, right? We have the Cuban example, the Catalonian example, the Ramon Llull Center in Barcelona as well, the CAM Center, Elías Querejeta School. There's huge diversity, and we're talking about very different curricula. That's right, the Elías Querejeta School wanted to be different. The CAM, the CUM, the different Spanish schools were doing really well, so we didn't want to mimic that and do the same old thing. We set up 3 different specialist areas that combined very well with what Tabacalera, the building, was housing, and we wanted to promote the creative, global, holistic, creative gaze. That's why we wanted to be different, because we're talking about festivals and training schools, and until I started researching this field, I had no idea how many of them there are.
Luego me gustaría pasar la palabra a John Howell, y abriríamos después.
Right.
¿No tienes ninguna?
Maybe we can hear a little bit more from the panel. Then I would like to hear from John Howell. And then I'm sure people in the audience have something they would like to add. Do you think your second film will be easier than your first film? Oh, I don't. I want to be realistic, and I was fortunate to have a reasonably successful first long feature film. So when I apply for funding in Mexico, I'm sure they will consider me more. and better because of that. But I sometimes think if I make a bad second film, that's it. So I want to do my second film as if it were my first film. That's my case. What about you, Belén? I would love it if the second film was as hard as this one. Not less hard. It's taken me 2 years to raise the funding for this first film, and it wasn't that hard. Why do I think my second film will be hard, or even harder? I don't know, it's just a gut feeling I get. Let's hope I'm wrong. All the best for both of you tomorrow. Thank you. And now I would like to hear from John. I have 2 questions, one for Maialen and another one for Antonio. Let me first say that I get a feeling that the San Sebastian Film Festival is evolving and changing from an event that would last 8 to 9 days every September to being something that works all year round, based on new talent, education and training, animation, a number of subject matters. And I think a step forward for that was your facilities being in the Tabacalera building. Am I right? Absolutely. We say it loud and clear. The San Sebastian Film Festival works all year round, and not just at the Elias Querejeta School, and not just because of the Ekusmira Berriak residency in February, but also because of the Zabaltegui Tabacalera screen, where the festival plays an active part all year round. In our strategy, we wanted to continue with our 9 days, which are the spearhead of the festival, where that continues to be the San Sebastian Film Festival, but for that to then continue and happen 365 days a year, which I think makes us different from other festivals around the world. And you're right, in our decision, having our facilities in Tabacalera and focusing on emerging talent has been key to it. And now a question for Antonio. Can you please fill in about platforms and the amazing success of a film that is first an opera prima, a Basque first film in the festival, in Toronto festival, which has ended up with their selling to Netflix in a 5-day process from the world release, world premiere to the selling. Yes, we are delighted that an opera prima, a first film, a Basque, completely made, produced in the Basque Country in co-production with Basque Film and Matté, who was the moderator in the previous debate, has resulted in such a huge success and has raised so much interest, because it is the result of a lot hard work of presenting it and warming it, and then the success of amongst the public from Midnight Madness, that we were all completely overwhelmed by it, and it's sold globally. That's a fact. But before Netflix, it was sold in some territories, and that's where the debate is going to go further. But what I think is that the next one is going to be sold, is Belén's film. If we talk about a film, let's talk about her film, which is a fantastic film. Well, if you want to promote it a little bit, well, I think she's totally wrong. Her second film is going to be very easy.
because she's going to be outburst by her success. I can picture the film here in the Goya Awards. David's I follow, but it doesn't belong to me, so I don't really care much about it. But anyway, Belén's film is the film in this festival. Gracias por la promoción. Any further questions from our selected audience?
Una pregunta es un comentario.
Well, rather than a question, it's more a comment. My name is José Ramón Pedrosa. I'm a producer and filmmaker, Mexican filmmaker. I did a film in 2017 with FICINE's funding. Well, it was successful and not that much successful in the sense it had a great audience. It was a rural film, and we did great when it came to distribution in Mexico, especially in Moreno State, because that's where the film was located. And in the strangest film festivals in the world, like in India, that I'm not sure about what they understood, and it won their award. It was in the Toulouse Festival, San Diego Festival, but it didn't make it to any platforms, or we didn't find any distributors for it. Well, a distributor from LA that I'm not really familiar with. But what I want to say is that there's a broad market that likes cinema, films, but they don't go to cinema theaters. So I was thinking about maybe joining the black market and distributing it underground, because in Mexico we still receive a lot of films in DVD format, and they reach many people. And I've launched a 5.1 system to broadcast it that way, but that means no financial reward. And the Latin American market is really broad. Anybody wants to add anything about this, or anything that we haven't spoken about? Yes, Chema has a question. Was David, I related to David's comment about the world of short films. I think I want my short films to be widespread for people to watch them. Any platform is good if the aim is attained. So do you think that you're putting your short film in YouTube is a good idea? In my opinion, I'm not too sure about this. Maybe because the net, especially YouTube, has changed the way not only of visioning short film, but also of evaluating them. The consumer immediately evaluates or judges your short film, but this also implies that it's short-lived. It doesn't last for a long time. So I'm not too sure about the positive side of YouTube or such platforms. Maybe after the short film has been exploded and we have obtained the largest possible financial benefits from it, then I understand. But as a first or second option, I think that it's a little bit dangerous. Well, yes, I didn't really mean it as the first step, the first option. Obviously, when you do a short film as a director, you want to show it in festivals. Selling it is not possible. But I mean, like the last options, the last windows, or the last doors you knock on. and not to just limit it and block it. I think the possibility of letting 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 people watch it, and I think that's important for a short film, that as many people watch it as possible. But I don't consider it as the first option, like making a short film and put it up, the link on YouTube immediately. For me, in my case, a festival in Mexico to ask me if I wanted to post my short film on the page. Yes, because then in the end it can be lost and nobody is going to ever see it again. If you keep it in your computer, then it's no use. If I'm interested in a director, I look in Google and I'm looking for open Vimeo films. Yes, ideally these platforms filming should include short films. Yes, and of course the incentive. Yes, we need money, funding to do short films. So we don't need to. So we can have money before an experiment. We need not that we're thinking about who are we going to sell it to while we are doing it, because then the result is going to be terrible. So we should be able to do the short films, post it on YouTube, and not doing 5 things at the same time with a terrible result. So, because in the end we're going to all mimic each other's short films. The result, we're going to have 8 identical short films. Yes. In the end, we are all going to do the same film. Yes, it's going to be, and in the end, there's a robot who's going to direct it, write it, with Netflix metadata, maybe. Yes, you have to reach the final audience who is going, in the end, to say if he likes them or not. Well, there's a big change in culture. This is a reality, and I like to point it out because I need to get used to it myself. It's like, who decides? For many years, culture was directed or made by creators who eventually would find an audience or not. But now everything is consumer-oriented. It's like the public is who decides what is going to be done. And I think that is interesting because it's the reality, it's the times we're living, but it's also a bit scary because I imagine James Joyce, who also had a hard time publishing Ulysses. I imagine him, if he was told, no, but why don't you introduce a UFO? Why don't you? There's too many reflections about this stupid character. So I find this is worrying because I can see that in books, because all the books look alike, thrillers, catharsis. I find it more and more difficult to find original novels. I know that they exist, but it's difficult to find them, and that's the same experience with films. I think some festivals do an outstanding job, but the work of creating, opening doors to produce diversity, because I'm not sure about artificial intelligence. Well, we have to be intelligent and let the things go the wrong way. But this goes beyond film. Yeah, it's culture in general. Yeah, it's your lifestyle. Because these days you go in a city and you think you could be in any other city because they all look the same with all these branch stores. So everything is clonated in culture and consumer products. Yes, we tend to uniformity. what socialists didn't attain, it will come by the way of capitalism. Yeah, it's a good conclusion. Yeah, let's not be so negative. We have two voices, two eclectic, diverse voices, so let's think there's still going to be creators who have their own voice, and yes, and underline, enhance the importance of festivals, which are our window open to diversity, because there's many very diverse films in festivals. Then talking about distribution is something else. But this is where imagination is valued. Thank you very much to everybody. It was a pleasure and enjoy film in the festival.